Good morning, everyone. We're continuing here in the Kitzur Shulchan Aruh, in the laws of life-threatening illness, which we call pikuach nefesh. The laws is a matter of life and death. And we began speaking yesterday that not only should a person prepare themselves to be mechal Shabbos, to desecrate the Shabbos over someone who is in this situation of life and death, where his life is threatened by the illness that he has, but it's a mitzvah for a person to be mechal, to desecrate the Shabbos in such a case. And therefore he writes, even if there's a goy who's around at the time that we have to mechal Shabbos, we should make every effort to perform the desecration of the Shabbos by the Jew himself. And he brings over here from the Mishnah Berurah that if there's a Talmud Chacham that is around, the Talmud Chacham, the Torah scholar, should be the one that has the schus, that has the merit to be mechal Shabbos, to desecrate the Shabbos on behalf of this person, because he will get great reward. And therefore, it's not maybe I should do it. It's a good thing. This is a big mitzvah over here. The laws of Shabbos are they are suspended at this moment in order to save a life. Says the Kitzur further. Anyone who desecrates the Shabbos on behalf of someone, a sick person who is in a life-threatening situation, even if it turns out that they didn't need him to do it, nevertheless he receives reward from heaven. Like, for example, if the doctor said, this sick person who's very ill right now, they need one fig in order to live. And 9 men heard the command of the doctor, and they ran off, each one into their own direction, and each one plucked off a fig from a tree. Now we know that if a person plucks off a fig from a tree, that's Kitzur, that's harvesting, which you're not allowed to do on Shabbos. And each one of them came with their fig, and they brought it. Kulam yesh lehem schar tov me'es Hashem yizbarach shemai. Each one of them is rewarded by Hashem. Even if the patient was cured, even after eating only the first fig. So you have 8 people who plucking the fig was irrelevant because it wasn't needed. Nevertheless, when they did it, they were doing it because there was a mitzvah to be mechal Shabbos for this person that was yesh bo sakana, that was in a life-threatening situation. In any case of pikuach nefesh where there's danger, even if it's a suffix, it's a doubt. For example, like the Shulchan Aruh talks about, if a building collapsed on a person, you don't know, is he dead or is he alive? Maybe he's fine inside there, but you have no idea. It's uncertain exactly what his situation is. So you move the stones, you remove the rocks, you do what you need to do to try to save that person's life. Mitzvah l'chalel alav es Shabbos. It's a mitzvah to be mechal, to desecrate Shabbos for such a person. Now the Mishnah Berurah does write over here that if it's not pending, where it's immediate pikuach nefesh, meaning the person is in a bad situation, but a slight delay, if you would do something like in the way of a shinui, for example, if you would do things in a roundabout way, for example, a woman is going into labor on Shabbos, and you have to get to the hospital. So there are ways to get to the hospital. You could pick up your keys, run to the car, turn on the car yourself. You could drive yourself. You could do it that way. That's one way. It's pikuach nefesh. You're allowed to. But if you're allowed to do it in a more of a roundabout way, for example, instead of driving yourself, you'll ask the non-Jewish neighbor, or you'll have your phone set up, and you'll do Uber, or you'll get a taxi. So that's a less of a chilul Shabbos. If time allows for such a thing, you're allowed to do that. However, of course, if the danger is imminent and not a second can be delayed, don't waste any time. It's a mitzvah to be mechal Shabbos in any way that is necessary in that case. And therefore it says, you're allowed to do all prohibited actions that are min Torah, that the Torah says you can't do on Shabbos. Nothing should stand in the way of saving one's life. The Torah was given itself for life. that we should live. You should do the laws of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and you should live in them. And Chazal, they expound upon this and they say, "V'chai b'hem," you should live in them. "V'lo sheyamas b'hem," you shouldn't die. Which means that what? That means if a person's life is endangered, we want him to live longer so he can do more mitzvahs. And therefore, you desecrate the Torah in order to save this person's life so that he'll be able to do more mitzvahs. Chutz, me'avodah zarah, gil harayis, v'shichas damim, except for the big three cardinal sins, which is idol worship and is gil harayis, illicit relations, and shvichas damim, murder, killing somebody. If somebody tells you, you do these or I'm going to kill you, shehem beyaharag v'lo ya'avor, on that you have to get killed and not transgress those. And the Maharal explains that the reason that these three are the big three that a person has to give up their life for is because they are the antithesis of what it means to be a Jew. Worshipping Avodah Zarah is the opposite of believing in HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Gil harayis, illicit relations, is the opposite of the holiness and the purity of the Jewish people. And shvichas damim, killing another Jew, is the opposite of a person feeling and understanding the sanctity and the value of life. And therefore, to get a person to do those things, it destroys the Jew that's inside of them. Then a person's not allowed to do that. He has to give up his life for those three things instead. We shouldn't be in such situations. And if God forbid we ever find ourselves in a situation where we're dealing with somebody with pikuach nefesh, don't be bashful and don't be shy and don't have any regret of what you're doing. You should know that if it's pikuach nefesh, there's a mitzvah to be machal Shabbos for that person to save their life, because Hashem wants them to live and be able to do more mitzvahs and not to die. Have a wonderful day.